Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome in to episode number 39. Episode 39 of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. This show was created as a safe space for cancer survivors and cancer supporters and cancer patients to come together to share their stories and connect, as well as find resources that provide healing, hope, and resilience. My name is Tim Sohn, a 15-plus year cancer survivor, host of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer, and a live streaming producer and coach for nonprofits, businesses, and entrepreneurs who make a positive impact in the world. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let us know where you're tuning in from around the world. We want to know where you're tuning in from. Also, let us know what connection that you have to cancer. Maybe you're a cancer survivor, cancer supporter, cancer patient. Maybe you are part of a cancer nonprofit organization or a medical professional. Any sort of connection to cancer. And so many of us have a connection to cancer. We want to know what your connection is to cancer. But before I introduce my official new co-host, and I'm so excited about that tonight, as well as our amazing guests, I just want to mention a few things briefly before we dive into our conversation. First, this time slot of 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays is going to be the official new time for Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. So you can continue to find the show in all the same places here on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. And I realize some of you may not be able to make this time because of work or other commitments, but I hope you'll be able to tune in on the replay and continue to connect with the amazing people in the community here that show up for sure. Also, just a reminder that the first ever in-person Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer event is coming up on September 10th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. here in Pennsylvania. And the link is in the comments. You could just go to perspectivesoncancer.com and that'll take you there to all the information about that, as well as to register. And I'm so excited. There's people that are coming from California to Canada to in between. So I'm so excited for that. So definitely come. The event is an opportunity to share your story in person, to support others, to feel inspired. The keynote speaker is Nancy Barrows, who has been a guest co-host here on the show. She's one of the people who inspired me to share my story of living with cancer for more than 15 years. So I'm so excited for that event coming up. So definitely go to perspectivesoncancer.com and check that out. Also, thank you to our sponsors for the event. And I just want to put that up on the screen briefly. Shout out to the Pinky Swear Foundation, X Cures, Russ Hedge, Jim Fuse, Veronica Jeans, my parents, George and Carol Sohn, Retrust, Andrea Sanchez, and Chasing Joy. They're all sponsors. This event would not be happening without all of you. Just so grateful for all of you, all of your support, for sure. So now I want to bring on the screen my official, it's official. Guys, it's official. It's really happening. It's really happening. My official new co-host, the one, the only, Erica Campbell. Hi, Erica.
Hi, Tim. I am so excited. It's official.
It's official. You are here. We're here together. We're here with everyone who shows up every week. I'm just so excited.
Yeah, I love the community that we are creating. Thank you.
Definitely. And you've been here as a guest co-host. You've been here as a guest. But do you just want to remind people a little bit about what your connection to cancer is before we bring our amazing guest on for tonight?
Yeah, it's actually multifaceted. So I'll start by saying that I personally am a 4-year breast cancer survivor. Had double mastectomy and I'm doing great. I was joked that I got a nice, great set of fake boobs. And I've put breast cancer in the back seat. But it also has impacted my family. So my other perspective, not only as a survivor, but as a daughter. I lost my mother to a very, very tumultuous breast cancer battle nearly 20 years ago, and watching her go through that, and just a lot of the grief that that brings for me as a daughter, so as a griever. And I also spent 20 years plus volunteering as a summer camp counselor for a summer camp for children with cancer. It's called Special Love, if you want to look that up. Just really enriching my perspective on what it's like for children with cancer. And now today I lead the Pinky Swear Foundation. So Pinky's Up, and we help keep the promise to always help kids with cancer and their families, both financially and emotionally. And so I'm coming at it as a leader, as a griever, as a daughter, as a survivor, as a volunteer. And I hope that enriches this conversation with you and the community.
Yes, it definitely does. So many different perspectives you bring to the conversation. So it's great to have you here as part of the community. And so, Erica, who is our guest for this week?
Our guest is a dear friend of mine, a Pinky Swear Foundation supporter, and a really inspirational woman and mom. Her name is Killian. She's coming here today to talk to us about her daughter Lauren's battle with a brain tumor nearly 11 years ago. So Chris is going to share Lauren's journey and her own perspectives as a mom and as just an incredible inspiration to all of us. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I love seeing all these faces and everybody that's taken the time to listen to my story and my family's story. So I am honored to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me today.
Welcome to the show, Chris, and thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you sharing Lauren's story as well as your perspectives.
Absolutely.
So before we dive into the conversation, we just want to thank everyone who's tuning in. We have David is here. He says hello from Deep Creek, Maryland.
Who happens to be my brother.
Shout out to your brother.
So I feel extra pressure.
Yes, nothing like having family here.
Right.
Lacey is here. She says, can't wait to hear Chris. Woohoo. She's excited. Brian O'Sullivan is here. He's actually going to be sharing his story at our in-person Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer event, our first ever in-person one there. So thanks for being here, Brian. He is a mantle cell lymphoma thriver. I like how you use the word thriver, Brian.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I do too.
And Jennifer is here. She says, hello, everyone. Thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Suzanne is a previous guest. She's tuning in from California. And Tom is here from Cincinnati. Thanks for being here, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Terry is here from Maryland.
Hi, Terry. Terry is a dear friend of mine. And I think, actually, Chris, you and Terry would become besties.
Okay.
There you go. And Don is here also.
Hi, Don. Oh my gosh, I love the Tomoff family.
Yes, yes. Mark Kageyama is here. He's also been guest co-hosting on the show and is a previous guest of the show. So thanks for being here, Mark.
Hi, Mark. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Ashley is here. Ashley Davis is here. Thank you, all of you. Stefan Kaplan is here. I just saw Stefan the other day. BFAM means brother from another mother. So thanks for being here, Stefan.
I love BFAM. That's my new favorite phrase now.
There you go. There you go. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here, for Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer at our new time here at 3 o'clock Eastern time. We really appreciate you all showing up for Chris and showing up for each other. So Chris, your daughter Lauren was diagnosed with brain cancer at the age of 10 in 2011. How did you find out that Lauren had cancer, and what symptoms did she have?
So, yeah, it was interesting. You know, we don't have any family history of any kind of cancer, certainly not childhood cancer. And, in hindsight, all of her symptoms were like textbook symptoms as far as cancer is concerned. But when you're not expecting a very healthy child to have cancer, anytime there's like a symptom of a headache, you just kind of, at least I did, I just kind of ignored it. And so to answer your question, how did it start? It started out with bad headaches. She was very tired. She was able to go to school, but she would come home at the end of the day and just sleep. And one of the bigger triggers was we had gone to a family event around Easter time, and her eyelid was drooping. And we had gone to the eye doctor a week prior, and the eye doctor didn't really think anything of it. And we had gone to, it was like a few days later, had Easter at my aunt's house. And family members who hadn't seen Lauren recently were all commenting, what is wrong with Lauren's eye? What's up with her eye? So that was kind of a little bit of a trigger for my husband and I, because we thought, okay, the doctor said ignore it, but now I've got family members who know what Lauren looks like normally. And so we thought we're probably going to have to address it, certainly. But again, didn't think it was like an emergent thing. And then she was playing baseball in the backyard, playing catch with my husband. She was a pitcher in Little League and was throwing the ball to him. And he threw the ball back to her. And she said, Dad, I can't see the ball. And so my husband said to me, something's really wrong. And again, I'm still in denial. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's not that big of it. I'm sure it's nothing. And he said, no, I just feel like this is something really serious. You need to call the doctor tomorrow. And so I called the pediatrician, and that's kind of how our journey began. I don't know if you want me to go into details relative to what the doctor said, but initially those were the symptoms that popped up. Bad headaches, which I have since learned is not typical for young kids to have headaches. Certainly the fatigue. But she was able to go to school, and able to function. But it was that, and also that drooping eyelid was certainly, again, all these things in hindsight were very obvious things. But, when you're used to just your kid go to the doctor for wellness visits, you're not thinking it's certainly not cancer.
And so, Chris, when you were initially with the pediatrician and then later on kind of with other physicians, how did that unfold? And what was your journey into the realization that this was more serious than you expected?
Yeah. So I called the doctor. Like I said, my husband had said something, I think it was a Sunday night, and he was the one who pushed and said, you got to call the doctor tomorrow. So I was like, okay. So I called the doctor. We go down, we go see him. My husband, my daughter, and I were in the pediatrician's office. And the first thing he said was, her pupil, did you notice that her pupil is dilated? Well, no. I mean, who looks at pupils? I do now, but I didn't back then. And so he said, he didn't indicate that he didn't indicate cancer or tumor or anything, but he just said, yeah, her pupils dilated. I think you guys should go down. We were living in outside of Pittsburgh, about an hour outside of Pittsburgh. He said, I think you should go down to Children's Hospital. I'm not saying you need to go right this minute, but I would go in the next day or two. Well, you hear your doctor say go to Children's, and you're going right then and there. So the three of us were heading. Lauren has a younger brother, 18 months younger, so he would have been about 8.5 at the time. I called my parents. I said, Austin needs to come stay with you. We need to go down to the hospital. Didn't pack a bag, didn't take anything, because this is going to be a quick fix that they're going to be able to figure out in Pittsburgh that they can't figure out in our little small town. So we head down to Pittsburgh Children's, and they start to do a battery of tests. And we realize the day is getting later, and now we think, okay, we're probably going to end up staying overnight. And we're about an hour away from home. And we had, like I said, we didn't pack anything. So I said to my husband, you stay here with her, because it would have been easier for me, if you know my husband, to go home than for me to say, look in this drawer and grab this and go here and get that. I said, you hang here. It'll be quicker for me to just run home, pack a bag for us, and come back. So in the time that I was gone, she had some additional testing done, and I'm driving back to the hospital, and I can remember exactly where I was, and I can see the hospital, and I remember calling my husband and saying, do you know anything yet? And he said, yeah, I do, but I'll tell you when you get here. And I said, no, tell me now. And he said, no, I'll tell you when you get here. So I get to the hospital, and Lauren was in the emergency room, and he pulled me aside, and he said, they found a mass on her pituitary. Now, no one's talking cancer at this point. They find a mass on her pituitary. And he said that at this time, we were now seeing the neurologists or the neurosurgeons, I should say, because they said that 99.9% of the time it's a benign cyst. They're going to go in through the nose, they're going to remove the cyst, and she's going to be fine. So we thought, okay, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, certainly don't want your kid to have a mass, but boy, it certainly could have been a lot worse, we're thinking. So in about the course of about 72 hours from starting with having it be, we met with a neurosurgeon. He comes in, very arrogant, never forget this kid either, a young kid. And he said, oh, there's no medical mystery to what's going on here. It's a benign cyst. I'm going to go in and remove it. Okay. Well, then all of a sudden, with really no warning, they come back to us. And like I said, this all happened within about a 72-hour period. So we go from, it's a benign cyst that we're going to remove through the nose to fast forwarding and saying, oh, hold up, we don't think we need to do surgery. We think we think we can take care of this with medication. So they're going to do some blood tests. So they're checking for markers is the term that they used. So we thought, oh man, okay, great, this is wonderful. So now at this point, because it had been several days,
right? Because now you don't have to have surgery.
Right, we don't have to have surgery. So now my parents come down with Lauren's brother. And so now it's my parents, my son, my husband and I and Lauren in the hospital. And we're walking around, and again, all these things you never forget, even 11 years later, it's like it was yesterday. We're walking around praying for blood markers. And I remember saying to my mom about, I don't know what this means. There's certain markers that we're praying for. Well, what we didn't know is that the blood markers were checking for cancer because your kid has, your kid's going to need chemotherapy. So we're praying for blood markers. In the meantime, Lauren is having an MRI done. That's a 2.5, we didn't know this at the time, a 2.5-hour MRI for a 10-year-old, full brain, full spine.
Oh my gosh.
My mother was in the MRI room with Lauren, and my husband and my dad and I, and I don't actually, now that I think about it, I don't even know where my son was. Maybe we pawned him off on somebody at this point. I don't remember. So my mom is down with Lauren getting the MRI, and they call us into the room. And again, all these things you never forget. And my husband was on my left, my dad was on my right. A doctor walks in the room, sits down and rips the Band-Aid off and says, I shouldn't say the Band-Aid wasn't ripped off at this point. She just sits down and just blurts out, Lauren has a non-germinoma germ cell tumor. And I had obviously no idea. None of us had any idea what that meant. And I said, as a throwaway, because we're just going to get it off, we're just going to take it off the table. And I said, it's not cancer, is it? And she said, yep. And at that moment, I start throwing up in a garbage can. My husband gets up and walks out of the room. My dad is beside me, who had some heart issues, so I'm worried about him. And now I'm thinking, how in the world do we tell my mom and Lauren that this benign cyst that we're going to just take out through the nose is now cancer? Right. So that's how that all started. So we go from no medical mystery to what this is. 99% of the time, it's a benign cyst, to your kid now has a brain tumor, a malignant brain tumor.
Yeah. It's quite a roller coaster of statistics too. 99.9% chance it's nothing.
Because you let your guard down at that point. So now it's like, okay, great. Now the worst stuff is taken off the table. They were so cavalier in their conversation with us about how we're just going to, no medical mystery. We're just going to go in and take it out. No big deal. So our guard was completely down.
Yeah.
Nobody prepared. When they said, we're going to, we don't think we have to have surgery, we're going to check blood markers, nobody prepared us that blood markers meant we're looking for cancer. I mean, it would have been nice if somebody would at least have said, time out, there's other things we're checking for. We were completely blindsided by that.
Yeah. And so what was the treatment plan that, it sounded like came up with, quite quickly?
Right. So like I said, that eyelid dropping, it kept getting worse. And so it went from a little bit of a droop to the point where she really couldn't even keep her eye open, and she was losing her peripheral vision within, you could hourly, you could notice physical differences in her. And what we found out what that meant was that the tumor was pressing on 3 of her optic nerves. That tumor just kept getting larger and just causing more and more eye problem. And so she was diagnosed on a Friday night at 7:30. And when the doctor told us what the treatment plan was, which was 6 rounds of chemotherapy and then when that was finished, full brain and full spine radiation. And they were going to start on Monday. And my husband, I give him so much credit. He said at the time, like I said, it was Friday at 7:30, and I get it. They want to go home, And my husband, what we're worried about her losing her vision. And my husband said they said we're going to have put a port in her chest for the chemotherapy. And my husband said, yeah, they were going to give her steroids. Actually, is what they said. They were going to try to do steroids to reduce the swelling. And he said, "Why are we waiting? Why can't we start chemo right now?" Yeah. And they kind of thought for a second. And I was so glad, because I was in no shape at that point to even make any kind of rational decisions. I was a mess, and thank God he wasn't. And that he was able to keep it together enough to say, let's start it now. And they thought for a minute, and they said, okay, no problem. And so we went, and they put a central line in her neck because the port in her chest would require surgery that they didn't have time to do.
Wow.
And so so then it was that night. So Friday night, we went at 7:30 at night. We went right downstairs, and they put the line in her neck and started the chemotherapy right then and there. And I give my husband all the credit, because I think it was because of him and his quick thinking that saved her vision. I truly believe that.
Yeah. You guys are a powerful team, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I am so grateful, because like I said, and I was in no shape to even think about, all I'm thinking about is, oh my gosh, and how are we going to tell Lauren, and how am I going to tell my mom, because she wasn't in the room, and how are we going to address all this? And he was just able, even though he had to leave the room to get his composure, he was able to just come back and be like, okay, we got the diagnosis. Now let's deal with it. And let's address it as quickly as we can.
Yeah. I just want to show some of the comments before we go on to the next question. Bill says, empathy for the patient and the family is so imperative. Unthinkable to hear how everything transpired to diagnosis.
Yeah.
Right, Bill?
I know. Yeah.
Stefan says, wow, Chris, I'm sitting here shaking my head at how you handled all of this. Heavens, what an ordeal.
Oh, that's nice.
Jennifer says, thanks so much for sharing with us today. My son is 10. This hits close to home. Scary.
Yeah.
Anita says, hello from Santa Fe, New Mexico. 4 months ago, I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. I am currently cancer free, but still undergoing oral chemotherapy. Thanks for sharing.
Of course. That's great news for you.
Yeah. I see you and I hear you, Anita.
Yes. So Chris, talk to us about kind of what has transpired since then, and how is Lauren doing now?
So she's doing well physically, and I think that's the thing that you don't really address with the cancer, is that her, like I said, when Eric asked what was the treatment plan, the plan was supposed to be 6 rounds of chemotherapy and then full brain and full spine radiation, which would have meant that learning would have been affected, which to this day, we don't really know exactly what that would have meant. But we got fortunate, and that was one message to send out, is that sometimes when you're given a treatment plan and it doesn't go the way they think it does, sometimes it's a blessing, and it's a roller coaster ride, to be sure. And in Lauren's case, after 3 rounds of chemotherapy, her tumor had shrunk 30%. And the plan was, after 6 rounds, it had to be gone. Her tumor was inoperable because of the location above the pituitary. And after 6 rounds of chemo, 100% of that tumor had to be gone in order for them to do the full brain and full spine radiation. So after 3 rounds, the tumor had shrunk 30%. She's looking quite a bit better. Family members are noticing. It's funny, in hindsight, you look at photos and think, wow, she looked terrible. But when you're living it, all those little things, like people are like, oh my gosh, she's got some color in her cheeks and she's eating and she looks a lot better. So we were very, very encouraged that by round 5, we thought, okay, now we've got to be really doing great, because she's doing really, really well. Well, they do a check of the tumor after round 5, and the doctor comes in and says, bad news, the tumor has not shrunk anymore. It's still at 30%. Now, that was probably one of the hardest days of our life, because we knew at the time that she was diagnosed that it was an inoperable tumor, and that it had to be shrunk. What they told us, it had to be shrunk 100% in order for them to do radiation, because by shrinking it 100%, that meant you got rid of all of it, and then the radiation is just getting rid of any subcells that are left. So we thought, what in the world does this mean? Is this it? I mean, because you're telling us you can't radiate it unless it's all gone, and only 30% of it is gone. And her doctor said there's no point in doing round 6 if it hasn't shrunk any more than it did after 3 rounds. So the plan was to go in, figure out what's. They said they were going to do a PET scan, which is basically a radioactive sugar dye that is put through the veins to see where the hot spots are in the tumor, so that they could go in and biopsy the tissue and get a more definitive look and treatment plan if there was anything else to be done. So they do the PET scan, and we had left the hospital because for us being in the hospital, just the smell of the hospital would just make us sick. So we would go in as quickly as we could to just go in, get out. And we were sitting outside, and the doctor called and after the PET scan and said, and I have to back up a little bit. So we love her now, but she, at the time, initially, we couldn't stand her because she had a terrible, and I would tell her this too, to this day, I mean, I love her dearly, but she had terrible bedside manner as far as there, no sugarcoating. But when she said something was good, it was fantastic, because, you know, nurses would say, oh, this or that's going well. And she'd walk in and she'd say, oh, no, this isn't good at all. You know, so we knew when we hung on every word. And so she called my husband and she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but the entire tumor is cold. So what was left after 3 rounds was scar tissue. There was no active tissue. So we're still wondering, what exactly does that mean? So she still said, we want to do a biopsy to be absolutely certain that it's scar tissue. So they went in, this is not immediately, but they went in, did a biopsy, took some tissue, sent it to Johns Hopkins to, I guess at the time, the guy was world renowned apparently, and he confirmed it. And he said, yes, in fact, what was left was scar tissue. And we were able to do targeted radiation, proton beam radiation in Massachusetts, instead of full brain and full spine. So what we thought, you know, after that 5th round of chemo, what we thought was a death sentence essentially for her, because you're telling us it has to be gone, was an absolute blessing. So I think that would be a message I would send to people, is that when you are going through this journey, it is a roller coaster ride, and don't get too caught up in those highs and don't get too caught up in those lows. You just have to, as hard as it is to do, you've got to try to stay even keel. And the doctors even told us, you know, we don't know how a lot of these tumors are going to behave, and we give you our best guesstimate on the experience that we've had with things, but we don't really know. And in the case of Lauren, they didn't know, and they, to this day, they still can't explain it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how did you eventually tell Lauren? I mean, imagine she's just a young girl that she had cancer. And, you know, on the other side, how did you tell her brother, Austin? Because I think a sibling is a really important part of that journey as well. So, you know, what was your approach, and were they different between the patient and the sibling?
Yeah. So for Lauren, like I said, when we got that initial message, my mom was in the room with her. So we pulled my mom out. We told her, and of course, fell apart, you know, immediately. And then she kind of got her composure. And then we went in and we just told her. We just told her. And I don't think that it really resonated at 10 years old what cancer means. All she said, we just said, you're going to be in the hospital, you're going to get some medication. And all she cared about was, is it going to hurt me? Is what they're going to, anytime they did anything, she just said, is this going to hurt? And as long as it didn't hurt, she was okay. So we told her straight up. Now, I think it took her months until one day she said to my husband in the hospital, Dad, am I going to die? And that is something that no parent should, a question that you should never have to even, you know. And we were standing there, and again, we're not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, we're not going to be cruel, obviously, but we're not going to tell, oh no, you're going to be great, because we didn't know. And so we just said, we hope not. We're doing everything we can, and you're with the best doctors, and we're doing everything we can, Lauren. So she had just such a fighting spirit. And like I said, she mentioned, and she only said it that one time, which I think is interesting. She only asked the question one time, and then just anytime they came in with the with the chemo. She was a trooper, and bless her heart, she, as soon as that IV would go in, she pretty much would instantly start throwing up from the chemo, and she would just wipe her mouth and just plug along. I mean, it was just amazing. And as far as Austin goes, this is probably a blessing. And he is just the most easygoing, happy-go-lucky kid. And I don't think it really resonated with him. We did say that we didn't say cancer to him. We just said Lauren's really sick, and she's going to have to spend a lot of time in the hospital. And he could tell, like we've talked to him since, about it now that he's older. And he said, I knew that things were bad. I could tell by the way Nanny and Poppy were reacting. I could tell by how you and Dad would be. I knew that it was something bad, but it never at 8.5. I don't think he had any clue that any thought that he could possibly lose his sister. He just knew that she was going to be sick, and he was bounced all over the place. I mean, that's the other part of it, is that you've got the guilt of, you're spending all your time with that sick child. And so I was blessed to have wonderful family members that, my brother and his wife, they would take him. My parents would take him. I mean, he bounced all over the place. And it was just sort of like, I remember Lauren was getting a radiation treatment, and I turned to my husband and I said, have you even thought about Austin? And he said, nope. And I said, neither have I. And then you're dealing with that. I mean, the like realizing in my head, like, what kind of mother am I? Like, what kind of person am I that I'm focused on Lauren and I'm not even thinking about Austin? But I guess the way I justified it was I knew he was in good hands. I knew when he was with my brother and his family that he was good, and they were having fun and taking his mind off things. And when he was with my parents, he was fine. But I mean, that's tough too. And I just saw how's he doing now? He's awesome, actually. He's 6'7". He's going to UNC Charlotte. He just finished a 8,000-mile cross-country trip with a friend of his. We should all be Austin. I joke and say, I'd like to live 24 hours in his head, because he lives every day to the fullest. He's a positive guy. And I will say he is he was always is the absolute best brother, because Lauren has a lot of anxiety. And like I said earlier, physically, she's doing really great. And she's got a lot of anxiety issues now that we're working through. And for 11 years, trying to find the right psychiatrists and psychologists and people that can help her. Big fears for her is like a safety issue. She doesn't like to be alone. And so there were many times where Austin's out living his best life, being a kid, and where we'd have to say, if my husband and I weren't home, Austin, can you stay home with Lauren? Because she doesn't want to be home alone. Can you cancel your plans? And, here he was a junior, senior in high school. He's like, okay, I'll stay home with her. So I just saw the question. He'll be 21 in December. So thank you for asking, but he's doing great. Yeah. So
that's great. And David said, Chris is a badass. Her superpower is being focused mama bear. She never lets something that doesn't sit well with her go by. She challenges, pushes, and questions everyone, doctors, nurses, and the patient.
That's really, thanks, Dave. That really means a lot. That really, like I said, I had great family support. I had great friend support. I mean, we couldn't have gotten through it with the support we had. So that was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. You are fierce, Chris. You are absolutely fierce.
I don't know. I think, but I don't think, people say, like, how did you do it? But you just do, when you're just forced into that situation, you just do it. I mean, you didn't have any, you have no choice. I mean, I don't do well if I have to get blood work for myself. I pass out at anything medical related, and I had to flush, she had to get heparin and all kinds of things and have her line flushed out and her port cleaned. And I had to do all that. And I'm thinking, even now, how in the world did I do it? It's because you had to, because you just do what you have to do, and you just put one foot in front of the other, kind of a thing. So.
Mm-hmm. And that's so well said, Chris. I think it's one foot in front of the other. I've spoken to lots of parents, and that's, it's a journey that no one wants to take. And it's so brave of you to take those steps. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Yes. So a reminder, everyone, we're here on Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer, and our guest is Chris Killian and co-host Erica Campbell over there. So thank you all for joining us. We're having a conversation about Chris's daughter, Lauren, and her perspectives tonight, Chris's perspectives. So Chris, in what ways did your family become more resilient through this journey? And then on the flip side, what were the challenges?
So resilience, I think it's like you don't sweat the small stuff. You try. I mean, I stayed aware. Certainly, I'm much more medically aware now of things, and like the woman who had said she's got a 10-year-old. Pay attention. I mean, you don't necessarily live in paranoia or fear, but listen to your instincts, I guess. But I guess mine, I say that, but I guess mine weren't that great when my husband's like, I think this is wrong. I think that's wrong. And I'm saying, oh no, she's perfectly fine. So do as I say, not as I do, kind of a thing. But resilience, I think it was just, you don't really, we try to enjoy every day. We try not to sweat the small stuff, kind of a thing. The challenges that we face, even now, 11 years later, like I said, the big one for her is the anxiety, the fears, trying to figure out. We're convinced that the fact that her pituitary gland was destroyed from the radiation has to have obviously an effect on her, just her chemical makeup, and finding the right doctors that can understand what's going on and to find help for her, because right now she's existing. She's not living because she has so much fear that she deals with. And as far as other challenges are concerned, anytime 11 years later now she gets sick, like especially if she's like, I have a headache, immediately in my head, and she doesn't know that. I'm like, oh, Lauren, you're fine. You're good. But immediately in my head, I'm like, okay, I got to keep an eye on this. I got to watch this. I mean, they did tell us that with her type of cancer, it was a very rare type of tumor, and that if it doesn't come back within 3 years of date of diagnosis, the likelihood is very rare. But again, we also had the unthinkable happen. We had the 99% of the time it's a benign cyst. So really statistics and things of that nature really don't mean anything to me, because I had, that will never happen to us. So I think that would probably be the biggest challenges, would be helping her now. I feel like right now she's existing as a she's struggling as she's not a thriver. You know what I mean? Like somebody posted, he's thriving now, and she's not there. So that's the biggest thing, is medical issues that come up, is this cancer again for her, and to finding help for her so she can really live her best life.
Yes, and I do want to give a shout out to Alicia Jones is here, and she's been commenting, but it says LinkedIn user, so I tracked her down on LinkedIn to see who it was. And I had a conversation with her during the Open Your Hearts and Wallets fundraiser that we did a few months ago, and her daughter was diagnosed with leukemia at age 10.
Wow.
And her daughter has actually passed. But thank you for being here, Alicia.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yeah.
And Alicia had mentioned about community. And
Yes.
I think, it takes a village to raise a child. And also I think it takes a village to support a family. So Chris, tell us about what community support you received and what that meant for your family.
Oh, we were absolutely blown away. I mean, as soon as people found out that she was diagnosed, I can't even tell you I did everything back then on Facebook, and I respect people that are very private, because everybody's journey is different. And so I've met families that don't want to talk about it, really don't want people to know about it. And for me, it was easier. It was therapeutic. It was very cathartic to just every night do a Facebook post and say, this is where we are and this is what's going on, because people can be very well intentioned, but somebody could see somebody at the grocery store and say, oh, I saw Chris at the grocery store and this happened. And then all of a sudden, it's like that telephone game. One person starts a story and it changes, on the other side. So I posted everything on Facebook, and the community, so we live in a small town. I think about 16,000 people live in Little Hermitage, Pennsylvania, and the surrounding communities. And people were just incredible. What can we do? I mean, I had strangers. I remember one day a stranger dropped off. She said, I know you don't know me, but I saw this, a necklace, and I wanted your daughter to have this. Would it be okay? I don't need to meet her, but can I just leave this for her. And people just were fundraisers. I mean, like her school, I think it was 2 days after she was diagnosed, her principal came to her school and brought a sweatshirt and had every single kid and teacher in the 4th grade sign the back of this sweatshirt and brought it to us at the hospital and said, we're thinking of you. And they stayed, and her teachers, they all prayed with us. And then the community at large, we were fortunate because we had insurance. We were okay financially, but people just, that's how they help, is by donating money. And so people they had spaghetti dinners for us, and they just benefits, all kinds of benefits in Lauren's name. And when it all was said and done, we had this little nest egg of money, and we felt a fiduciary responsibility to that money, where I know the people in this community, if I would have said at the end of her journey, because a lot of people would donate money and said, this is for Lauren, do whatever she wants with it. She wants to buy a bike with what I'm giving her. She wants to go on a trip, whatever she wants to do. So I know that if we would have said, she finished treatment and we're going on vacation, I promise you that nobody would have thought a thing about it. But we felt more of a responsibility to our community, because it's not a wealthy community. And so when people would give us $5, $10, that was a lot of folks. That was a lot of money. And so we thought, okay, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with this money? How are we going to, what do we do with this now? And when Lauren was in the hospital, we saw a lot of kids that didn't have family support, there were babies in cribs getting chemo with not a family member, not a soul in the room. And we asked the social workers and the nurses, like, of course, my initial response was, what's wrong with these parents? I mean, why are they not here? Why are they not? And then you realize, well, they're not there because guess what? Somebody's got to pay the bills, and somebody's got to keep the insurance up, and somebody's got to stay with the other kids. And so, that was why they weren't there. It wasn't because they didn't care about their kids, but the only reason the kid's in the hospital is because somebody's able to work and has to keep things going. And so we decided with the money that we were going to start a foundation, and we started a foundation called the Killian Foundation, and we started it in 2012 and raised a pretty good amount of money. And we teamed up with the social workers at Pittsburgh Children's, and they would vet the families, and we provided airfare, because Pittsburgh is one of the 9 cancer research hospitals in the country, and we would provide airfare or food or hospital or hotel stays for family members, because it's all that stuff is great, but if you can't, research is great and awareness is great, but if you can't afford to get your kid to the hospital, I can't even wrap my brain around. We struggled. The financial pieces, the emotional pieces, more than any family should bear. I can't even wrap my brain around the financial struggle to have to now, is my kid going to live or die? And then am I going to lose my house? Am I going to lose my job? What are we going to do? So we took that money and had a foundation and continued to raise money and worked with Pittsburgh Children's. And then we moved out of Pittsburgh, and through several moves, we landed most recently in Charlotte, North Carolina. And again, back to that good old Facebook. And I saw that there was a golf outing for a group called Pinky Swear for pediatric cancer. And I'm like, what is Pinky Swear? And Erica is executive director of Pinky Swear. And we thought, oh my gosh, I looked on the website, and they started in 2002 with a mission basically identical to what ours was. And we thought, well, rather than try to reinvent the wheel in Charlotte, because they had a strong presence in Charlotte as well as in Minneapolis, and now growing all over the country, we thought we'll just merge our little foundation in with Pinky Swear. But it took us probably, I don't know, over a year, Erica, I think, for us to get comfortable, because we had about $50,000, so we weren't huge, but that was a lot of $5 bills. And what mattered to us is that we told all of our donors when they gave us money, it was transactions with transparency. Mm-hmm. And so that was that if you gave me $5, because it was family run, basically the one who ran the foundation, that if you gave me $5 was going to a family in Pittsburgh. or wherever, wherever they were being treated at Pittsburgh Children's. And so I needed to know, and my husband needed to know, and Lauren, I mean, it was really came down to Lauren, what do you want to do? And talking to them, because it was her money ultimately. And so after a year of really vetting Pinky Swear, and are these folks who they say they are? Because there's a lot of charities out there that, talk the talk, but we see a lot of, fancy buildings and a lot of executives that are getting paid a whole lot of money, and people think money's going one place and it's not going where you intend it to go. And so after about a year's time of talking with Erica and Lacey and the folks at Pinky Swear, we thought this makes sense because they've been around since 2002. They've raised so much money. They've got a broader reach. So we were able to keep our name, the Killian Family Fund, under the umbrella of Pinky Swear. And so we still continue to raise money, and we can still do things, and our donors know that our money is still there. It's just being handled by the folks at Pinky Swear. So we're still helping families. We're just kind of letting the experts handle things for us, and we try to stay as involved as we can with Pinky Swear. And whenever the folks need someone to talk to a family or go to an event or something, Lauren and I are out there, kind of talking about our story and Pinky Swear and getting the word out there to help a whole lot of families.
Chris, you are a powerful ambassador, and I think you speak so eloquently about the journey and inspire other parents in that journey. And I think what I love about it is that you see the holistic aspect. You talked about the medical journey, the emotional journey, and of course the financial journey. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the thing,
what
people,
a Pinky Swear promise it is.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I think people don't realize that aren't impacted, because I know we certainly weren't. I mean, you hear somebody's diagnosed, kids, anybody, someone's diagnosed with cancer. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. How are they getting to the hospital? In the case of a child, who's taking care of the other kids? How are they getting to the hospital? Who's keeping the lights on at home? Who's going to work? There are so many facets to it. And then, like I said, with Lauren, 11 years out, we're still dealing with it. You ring the bell, she rang her bell. I remember all these dates, December 7th, 2011, she rang the bell at Mass General in Boston, where she got her radiation. And we had a huge celebration, and that was awesome. But that just ended one piece of it. Here we are 11 years later, still dealing not with the actual disease per se, but the long-term effects of it, so it's not over by any stretch. We're just just dealing with, other issues that come along with that.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Chris, for all the work and thank you for all the work that you do, and the work with your foundation and your partnership with Pinky Swear. And I just want to go to some of the comments, and I know Alicia, who I mentioned before, Alicia Jones, she has a foundation as well that she created in the legacy of her daughter. It's called the Courtney Jones Care and Cure Foundation. So I asked her to put the link in the chat. So that's here for people to check out as well.
Awesome.
And so definitely check that out. Tom Tressler is here. He said, I've always been able to say I had the best parents in the world. Chris, your kids will always be able to say the same thing.
That's a nice thing. Thank you.
Yes. And Terry says, beautiful. And she says, I love the merge with Killian to Pinky Swear.
Yeah.
And Susanna says, I love that there are so many foundations to help financially. I have a Facebook group for leukemia mamas, and many of them need financial help.
Yeah.
Refer them, Susanna, to Pinky Swear Foundation, please.
Definitely. And definitely put the link in the chat as well.
Chris and I are here to help.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes, for sure. So Chris, what has been the silver lining in this journey?
Well, I think the silver lining has been, I feel like I'm a much more compassionate person. I'm much more philanthropic. And I think, I would not have been involved with a pediatric cancer charity to the extent that I am had this not happened to Lauren. I've talked to quite a few families that are going through what we went through. And I hope that hearing my story, if it even helps just one family, that I can just be that empathetic ear. So many folks can be sympathetic, but not everybody can be empathetic to a situation. And I try some days are easier than others, but I try to really give grace to people that because we don't know what people are going through. So that person in traffic, and believe me, I'm I'm terrible with that. So I'm a work in progress, but I try, but I try to be like, if somebody's rude in the checkout line, well, maybe that mother was me 11 years ago who just got news that her daughter has cancer. Maybe we just don't know what people are going through. So I think that that's been the silver lining. And throughout my kids growing up, if Austin he was a basketball player, and if he didn't make a certain sports team or whatever, who cares? He's here, and enjoy the little moments of life, because not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to do that. So, and recognizing, like I said, that I'm a work in progress. Some days are better than others, so I
Reach it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I try to do the very best I can and be the best person that I can through all that. But I think that would be the silver lining, is it just made me more philanthropic and more empathetic to what people are going through.
Chris, when did you start sharing Lauren's story and why? I'm curious.
Pretty much right out of the gate, to be quite honest with you. I mean, like I said, from when the time she got diagnosed, I mean, we were an open book. I mean, so on Facebook, I posted the good, bad, and the ugly. And then we got to know her doctor, who, like I said, couldn't stand her in the beginning. I remember I don't even remember, my mom would know better than I would. I think it was like day 3 or day 4 into treatment. I was like, I can't stand this woman, and she said something to me at one point, and the doctor said, you can see somebody else if you want. Well, I realized, even though I didn't like her bedside manner, she's a rock star. Regina Jakacki is her name, and she's one of the best in the country. So while her bedside manner stunk, I was like, suck it up, Buttercup, because this woman is possibly going to be the one who's going to save your daughter's life. So get over the fact that, that she is the way she is. But because we became friends, and because we had said to her, we want to start a foundation, she, along with the social workers, vetted families for us. And so she came to me, even while Lauren was still going through treatment, and would say, hey, I've got a family that just got diagnosed. Would you be willing to talk to the parents? And my husband oftentimes would talk to husbands, because sometimes, just that guy to guy, because women, we can cry and whatnot, but guys seem like they need, sometimes feel they need to be tough and strong for the family. And so, he had talked to, other dads that were being diagnosed. So it was right early on, and it was cathartic for us, because I got to tell you, I mean, if I would have had a family like us to talk to in the beginning, boy, that would have been nice. I mean, we didn't have that. I mean, we had the hospital workers, and like I said, my family was wonderful. But they weren't like right in the trenches. And like, actually, I mean, they were and they weren't, I mean, like they were dealing with it with me, but to actually sit down and talk to another mother who was actually going through the exact same thing that I was going through, it was just as helpful for me to talk to people as it is, it was very much a give and take, I guess. I mean, I benefited just as much talking to people as me talking to them. So,
yeah. I think, what I hear from families when they have that first diagnosis is like, they just feel so alone. So What I'm hearing you say is just that you were able to eventually connect and find those other resources, other people, other humans, to really make you feel like you were seen and heard.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is too, and I think part of it, we were lucky too with our community. It's because the doctor warned us. She said, sometimes, people might step away from you, because sometimes people feel like they can catch cancer, that they're going to, so that they might shy away from you. They might shy away from Lauren. Don't take it personally. And that was never our experience. Everybody, just like I said, community, family, everybody just rallied around us. And so that's the thing I would say to people too, is that when you see somebody or someone has cancer, just be there. You don't have to, no one expects you to have answers. I don't expect you to tell me everything's going to be okay, because it's not. And what I'm going through sucks, and there's nothing you can tell me. You can't tell me it's going to, everything's going to be fine. But just being there and just saying, I'm sorry, and giving a hug and saying, I'm thinking of you, that goes a really, really long way.
Yeah. So Chris, what advice would you give to a mom or a dad who is facing a new diagnosis? Because you have a lot to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's tough because for me, it was talking about it, being open. Nowadays, like I said, it's where I was related to Zuckerberg with the way I plug Facebook, but maybe it's not Facebook, just social media for me personally. Finding those support groups, finding those cancer support groups on social media is huge. Finding your people that you can talk to. I would suggest talking to those the social workers in the hospital
100%.
are key because they can point you in the right direction to find like a pinky swear. Because that's the other thing, you get diagnosed and then it's like you think, and like I said, we were fortunate enough that we didn't have that financial worry. But if you do, don't be so proud to say to the social worker, we are struggling and we need help. And who can we talk to? They are the front line. They are the ones to talk to, and they are the ones that can help you. So I guess in the short run, it would be lean on those social workers at the hospital. Find those social media groups that you can just in your darkest hours and just type away and talk about things openly and honestly with other families that are going through what you're going through.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. I think social workers are angels on earth.
Oh,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Their endorsement. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for
sharing
your
Chris.
story
My pleasure.
and your perspectives. Yeah.
Unbelievable and inspiring and fierce mama bear.
You're sweet.
Yes,
I thank
that
you
definitely
guys.
Sums it up.
Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everybody for staying on for this hour and listening and your support. And it really means so much. And Tim, thank you. And Erica for doing this. Because this is, again, if I would have had a platform like this, just to listen, and like I said, resources, reaching out to either one of you that are like in the trenches and have the places that people can go to get support is amazing. So thank you, Tim, for starting all of this.
Major props to Tim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. I'm going to take you off the screen. If you can hang out a few minutes, we'd love to say thank you afterwards.
Of course. My pleasure. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Erica, what a conversation.
Wow. I said, she is an inspiration and she is the fierce mama bear I want to be. Love her.
Definitely. Definitely. So guys, thank you all for showing up. Thank you all for showing up for Chris, for Erica, for each other. We're always looking for guests who want to show up and share their story, whatever your connection is to cancer, whether you're a survivor, maybe someone in your family has had cancer or has cancer, or whatever your perspective is. Definitely reach out to me if you're interested in sharing your story, or maybe you're like, I'm not sure whether I want to. Definitely still reach out and let's have a conversation. Yeah, definitely.
Great.
So Erica, who is our guest next week on Showing Up?
Next week, our special guest is the one and only Russ Hedge. His connection to cancer is that he lost his father to lung cancer 5 years ago in July. So let's come out, support Russ, hear his story and his beautiful perspective, and continue to support each other. I'm looking forward to the conversation, Tim.
Yes, me too. Russ is a good friend. He's also a live streamer. He does so many live shows. Oh my gosh, Erica. And he has such a positive mindset. It's going to be a great show.
That is something I'm really interested in learning, how to get that positive mindset.
Yes, definitely. So thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. A reminder that next week's show again will be at 3:00 Eastern time. You can find it all the same places. Erica is ready to dance. She's just ready to go.
Totally. I'm ready for the music.
I know you are. I know you are. I'm getting it ready. So we're going to go out the same way that we come in every week. And we will see you guys next week. Have a great week. And it's time to dance. Here we go. Here we go, Erica. We're going to dance now. Bye.
Bye.